Hello everybody, Ranger John Heron here again from Huntsville State Park, and I want to thank you for coming back to our virtual program, our navigational series. Today we're going to be talking about map orientation. So this is how you hold your map can help make it easier to interpret your map and the land in front of you. We're also going to be discussing today how to navigate obstacles, whether using 90-degree turns or leapfrogging methods. We're also going to be joined by Ranger Joel. He's going to be showing us how to both make and use ranger beads, and these are going to help you with your pacing as well as measuring the distance that you hike. Alright, so we're going to practice map orientation out here on the Chicopin Trail, which is right in front of me here. Now, normally someone may want to just hold their map so that north is up ahead so they can read everything, but with this we're going to line it up with magnetic north, which is about over to our right hand side here. So I'm going to want to rotate my map or orientate my map this direction so that I know I'm going to head down the Chicopin Trail. And now, looking at ways we can interpret it, I'm going to be headed a little bit to the left here, and then I'm going to make a turn to the right. There'll be a turn to the left. I'm going to make one more turn to the right, and then I'm going to find an intersection right there that's going to be the CCC Trail. So let's head down this trail and see if that's what I find. And here we are. So as we saw, we went kind of back and forth along some turns, came up this final stretch, and in front of us here is the CCC Trail, and it's cutting off to our right. We'll practice this coming the other direction on one of our other trails. Okay, so this time I am on the Dogwood Trail, located about here, and I'm going to be headed down to this intersection. Now, holding my map like this with north facing up where I can read everything, to the right is going to be the Nature Center. If I go left, I will be headed to the day use area. But if I orientate my map correctly, by looking at my compass, I'm going to aim north with the magnetic needle there, and so now the map is laid out in that is the direction I am going. So now I notice when I hit that intersection, if I go right, that'll take me to the day use area. However, if I take a left, I am then going to head to the Nature Center, which is where I want to go back to. So especially for someone who's dyslexic, orientating your map is a great visual way to make the interpretation easier and your directions. So we're going to head this direction and see when that intersection pops up. So looking at the map, you can see how much easier it is to interpret the map when it is correctly oriented. We came down here on the Dogwood Trail to the intersection, just where we're at. We can see it is going to take us to the left or to the right. We also notice that right out in front of us, there's a roadway. So we can look at this and see, okay, if we head right, we're going to go into the day use area. If we head left, we're going to go to the Nature Center, which is where I want to head up. So, when I head that direction, I'm going to turn towards the Nature Center. I'm going to take a look at my compass, realize north, almost right in front of me. So I'll orientate my map, just a slight turn off. And now, as I head up there, I may see a trail off to my right but I'm going to continue just pretty much in a straight direction to the nature center. If I look at the topo lines, I can see there's going to be a little going down, and then we're going to head back up as well to the nature center. So that's my next goal. Now, people will say that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. And this is true, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the quickest way. Sometimes you're going to have obstacles in your way, and rather than trying to directly overcome them, it may be faster to go around them. So I want to show you some techniques that'll help you overcome obstacles, or better yet, move around obstacles a lot faster. Okay, so when navigating obstacles, one of the techniques you can use is 90 degrees. And that's adding or subtracting 90 degrees to your bearing, maneuvering around the obstacle, and then going back. We're going to take our compass, and from where we're standing, we're going to go at a bearing of 220. So I'm going to turn my bezel. So 220 is lined up with my arrow direction. I'll hold it level in front of me. And now I want to rotate my body. If we all remember that little line, we're going to put red Fred in the shed. So there we go. And now we're going to start hiking in that direction. Heel's kind of bouncing around on me. Once we get there though, we've come across an obstacle that we've got to get around. So what we can do is we can add 90 degrees to our compass. So we're going to go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 degrees. Same as before, we're going to hold it out. This time we're going to rotate ourselves. Red Fred in the shed. And now we're going to count our paces. 1, 2, 3. We're past our obstacle here. So now I've added 90 degrees. I'm going to subtract it, go back to that 220 we had. I'll rotate it again. Line myself up. And now I'm going to go forward. You can count your paces if you're doing that for your tracking. Right now I'm just going to get myself on the other side of the obstacle. Now we've added 90 degrees to scoot over. This time we're going to subtract 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. Hold it in front of me. Red Fred in the shed. Now I came over 3 paces, so we're going to go back. 1, 2, 3. And now I'm back in line with where I was when I took my bearing of 220. So we're going to go back to that 220 bearing. Hold it out. Find my bearing there. And now I'm ready to continue on. Now you can do that 90 degree method on smaller obstacles like say a tree, but you don't have to subtract that 90 degrees. If you're coming up to a tree and you're following your bearing, you can stop, sidestep once, proceed to the other side, sidestep again, and then continue on. Now another form of navigating obstacles is called leapfrogging. This especially is helpful if you've got a larger obstacle like a crevice, canyon, a river, or take for example here if we have a road where we don't want to jaywalk and we're not near a crosswalk. So we do want to find our way across there. So this can be especially helpful if you have 2 people or more. One could stand at one location, keeping the bearing in place, Well, then somebody could then go find an area where there's a crosswalk or maybe a dry spot to cross a river or bridge. They will then go over to the other side, and from there you can navigate them in which direction they need to move to line themselves up with the bearing. Now, if you were doing this by yourself, you could take a look at your bearing, look across, and I notice the bearing's right in line with that stop sign. So I'm going to take a mental note that that stop sign is in line with the bearing. Then I can safely go now find myself back in line, find my bearing again, and then I could proceed along on my journey. Now with the skills I showed you, you should be able to have your map, your compass, be able to get a bearing, and then once you have that, you can orientate your map correctly, keep Red Fred in the shed, and proceed to walk towards your destination. But now if you wanted to do this in a competition, this is kind of a slow method to do that. So this is another area where you could use a different form of leapfrogging. I can look at my compass and see that using it right in front of me, there is a tree that is in line with my bearing. So now instead of having to hold these there, I can set them down or in my pocket, and then I can move a lot faster towards there. Once I'm at that tree, as shown with the 90 degrees, I can take one step, move over, clear one step, holding up my compass again for my bearing. I'm going to identify another landmark in front of me, and I'm going to then run towards that. So now you're running from tree or hilltop, and you're going to move a lot faster. So as I said, shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, but it isn't necessarily the fastest. If we were at the Headwaters Boardwalk and wanted to go over to the CCC culverts, the shortest way to do that would be just go straight across. But I know with some wetlands over here, and then going over fences and then through the National Forest, or let's even say these were private lands right here that you could not go on without trespassing, it may be a much more difficult path to cross. The quickest way may be to just stick to the trails, which is good leave no trace practice, and maneuver around there. The nice thing about state park maps is they like to give you the distance between trailheads. But if you don't have something like that and you've got to navigate around obstacles, a neat little tool to have is just a simple piece of string. You can set this at your starting point and then lay it down, kind of bending it and moving it along the trail. This one's a little stiff, but we're going to try it out. I'm just going to maneuver around all the way through the nature. Oh, there we go, CCC. There, little bend, and we're at the culvert. So there's our distance between these 2 points. Yes, it's a little longer, but we're going to have less obstacles, and it's going to be quicker and a lot easier for us. But how do we know this distance if we didn't have these little markers? You can take this string and bring it down to your scale on your map and carefully lay it out. Let's see, that's half a mile, 1 mile, mile and a half, about almost 2 miles there. 1 3/4 miles. So there you go. So using that string, we're able to measure that distance out. Now, as you're hiking along, how do you get an idea for how long you've hiked, or how long you've already hiked, or how long you still got to go? Well, there's another great tool out there that you can use to measure your pace and your distance. And this is where I'm going to let Ranger Joel talk to you about Ranger Beats.
Thanks, Ranger John. I really do appreciate you letting me join your video series here today. When I first heard that Ranger John was going to be covering basic map and compass and navigation skills, I got really excited because I just made a set of Ranger beads or pacing beads, and I asked John if he would let me show these off to you guys today. Pacing beads or Ranger beads are very easy to make, and we use them in order to determine how far we've traveled when we're traveling on foot. We don't need much to make a set of pacing beads. In fact, you can make it with just a piece of paracord. It's a little bit nicer if you can make it with a piece of paracord and something like pony beads. And let's take a closer look at these Ranger beads and how you can make a set of your own. If you do have beads, like little pony beads, you're going to need 14 of those and 1 foot of paracord in order to make a set. If you don't have beads and you just have paracord or another type of cordage, you'll need about 2 feet in order to make your set. So what I'm going to do is tie a loop in the top of my cordage. That gives me somewhere to hang it on a necklace or hang it on a backpack on a carabiner so that I can keep track of my pace count with my Ranger beads. Somewhere easily accessible where I can just slide these as I'm walking. So I'm going to tie just a little loop in the top of my paracord. I'm going to place 5 beads on that loop. You can see that I use beads that have little numbers just to make it easier, and I put 5 of those with number 1 on the bottom and number 5 on the top. So I slid them on 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I then left about 2 inches or so and tied a knot. That gives me room to slide these beads up and down and keep track of my pacing counts. Below that knot, I put a series of 9 beads on my paracord, again, leaving a space of about 2 inches or so, and tied a little stopper knot, just a square knot, on the end of my bead set. So this is what my bead set looks like. 5 beads on the top and 9 beads on the bottom. If you don't have beads and you want to use 2 pieces of paracord to make this, it's quite simple. I'm going to tie that loop in the top, and then instead of placing beads on there, I'm going to tie a series of 5 knots, cutting each knot off on both ends as I form it, and I'm just going to slide those knots up and down like I would beads. So you can get away making this in a pinch out of just paracord. That is how we make our set of Ranger beads. So what we're going to do when we're using pacing beads or Ranger beads is first we need to know our pace count. And that is how many paces it takes us to go a specific distance. So let's take a look at that next. So to establish our pace count, what we need to do is find out what kind of terrain we're going to be traveling on and what gear we're going to be taking with us. Your pace count is going to change based on the terrain and what you're carrying. So in order to establish our pace count before we go on a hike, what we're going to do is put the gear on that we're going to be taking on that hike, and we're going to hike on terrain that's similar to the terrain that we're going to be traveling when we want to measure distance. All right, so to establish our pace, what I've done is I've set a red rag on the ground. I have then taken a measuring device and measured 328 feet from that rag in a straight line on pretty flat terrain, and I've set another rag down on the ground. So now I know that I have 2 rags that are placed exactly 100 meters or 1/10 of a kilometer apart. I'm going to start at the first rag, count my paces to the second rag, turn around and come back counting my paces, add those up, divide by 2 to get an average, and then I'll be my average pace count on relatively flat terrain with no gear to go 100 meters. So you can see there's a rag on the ground here, and I've got my measuring wheel. And then way out there at the end of my property line is another rag. So we're just going to go ahead and get started here. So basically, I'm going to start here at this red rag, and I'm going to step off with my right foot. And every time my left foot touches the ground, I'm going to count that as 1 pace. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 58, 59, 60. 60, my foot landed on that line. So now we're going to do it back and count it again. So 60 for our first. Let's see how many paces it takes us to go back that 100 meters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 59, 60 and a half. So my foot fell back on that line the second time at 60.5 paces. So we've got basically 60 is my pace count to go 100 meters or 328 feet on flat terrain with no gear. Let's go back inside and wrap. Okay, so now that we know that for me on flat ground with no day pack, it's about 60 paces to go 100 meters. So let's talk about how to use these pacing beads to measure distance in the outdoors. So you'll take your beads, you'll have measured your pace count before you go on that particular style of terrain with that piece of gear. You'll hang them on your backpack or on a necklace, and you'll start your hike. When you get started, you'll count your paces. And for me, because I go 60 paces in 100 meters, every time I count to 60 paces, I'm gonna move one of the bottom beads down. So 60 paces, and I'll start over, 60 paces, start over. I'll move bead number 3 down when I hit 60 paces. That means I've been 3/10 of a kilometer, and I'll continue until I've moved that last bead down. That means I've been 9/10 of a kilometer or 9/10 of a mile, 900 meters or 9/10 of a mile. So I'll count 60 paces again, but this time I'm gonna move one of the top beads down and reset all of my bottom beads by moving them back up. So now I know that I've gone 1 mile or 1 kilometer. I'll continue counting 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 kilometers, and so on until I'm ready to move the top bead number 2 down, at which point I've gone 2 kilometers or 2 miles. I will continue that until I run out of top beads. Use them. Let's talk about when I would use Ranger beads. So if I was in dense tree canopy and one of the other methods didn't work, Ranger beads would come in very handy. So if I knew that I needed to go about 2 miles at 270 degrees, then I'm gonna hit a lake, or I need to make a turn at that point and head in a different direction, I can use my pacing beads to determine the distance that I've traveled and know about when I need to turn. I could also use these even on a trail that's clearly defined, but not well marked. So I know exactly where the trail is and I can easily follow it, but I might know that there's a water source 5 miles in on this trail or a campsite 5 miles in on this trail, and being able to accurately measure the distance that I've traveled will let me know approximately how long it's gonna be before I get to that campsite or that water source. So they're useful in a variety of different ways. I'll let Ranger John touch on other ways you can use Ranger beads as he goes throughout the rest of this navigation series. And with that being said, I'm gonna challenge you guys. Go ahead and make your own set of Ranger beads at home. Take a photo of those and upload those as a reply to Ranger John's video here on Facebook. Personalize them, put some color in there, make it colorful and neat, and show us what you guys have come up with. I do post a lot of fun and educational videos on Lake Livingston State Park's Facebook page as well. I'll include the link down below here for you now, and I hope that you'll join me on Lake Livingston State Park's Facebook page sometime in the future. Until then, I'm going to turn it back over to John so he can continue with this excellent video series. Thank you guys. Ranger Joel signing off, saying remember, life's better outside.
Wow, Ranger Joel, thank you so much for sharing that wonderful little tool there and for challenging people to make their own. I actually took up that challenge, made my own set of Ranger beads, and I hope to inspire you with a little different take on how you can do it and make it your own. Alright, so I took up Ranger Joel's challenge to make my own set of Ranger's beads, but I wanted to inspire you and try something a little different. So instead of having a little rope that I could clip onto my pack, I made a bracelet. So using some buckles that included a whistle too, and some paracord, I was able to tie up a little bracelet here, and rather than having numbers, I used words. So you can see I still used 14. I've got the 9 on the bottom and the 5 up top, and they say, let us take a hike. So as I'm hiking on and pacing myself out, I can slowly move these bottom ones down, all 9 of them, and then once I get to that end, I can move them back and move over one of the top ones. And so there you go. Another option you can use if you don't want to use cordage, you could do a bracelet. You can even make a little necklace or something like that. And again, I'm using some paracord or utility cord you can find at an outdoor store, and just some little pony beads. So you can find different colors, you can find them with numbers, letters, symbols, but a wonderful little craft you can make and a tool you can use while navigating the trail. Thank you so much for joining us on this video, part of our navigational series. I hope you learned the importance of orientating your map correctly and how that can make interpreting the map and the land before you much easier. Learned a couple easy techniques to get around obstacles and some skills in how to move faster across the land. On top of all these skills, now you have another tool to use on your navigational journey. We look forward to you joining us out at our state parks. These are great places where you can practice and build your confidence in these skills and in the tools you have. And remember, let us take a hike. Look forward to seeing y'all out here. Y'all take care.